O'clock. Welcome to the first interview for the morning right here on Salam Media. And we're talking about the crisis in the country, and that, of course, is the electricity crisis, Eskom, and ongoing rolling blackouts. Energy expert Chris Yelland is here to talk to us about this very, very dire situation. Chris, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and good morning to you and your listeners.
It seems every time you and I talk, there seems to be a couple of months interval between our chats, but the situation seems to be becoming progressively worse. Would I be correct in suggesting that?
Well, I think you are correct. We have been experiencing this year intermittent load shedding stage 2 to stage 4. And of course, we've been experiencing intermittent load shedding since 2008. But we've now seemed to have been moved into a stage where there is almost continuous load shedding, and it's no longer intermittent. I hope that will not be the situation going forward, but certainly for the last few weeks, it has been just that. So if you look at the hours of load shedding this year, we have already experienced more hours of load shedding this year than the whole of last year. And we're only just past halfway through the year. So things are getting worse. And if we do nothing, or shall I say, if we continue to do what we've been doing in the last 10 years,
which is nothing. Which is nothing.
Now, some may say that something has been done, but whatever is being done is not producing the results. So we cannot just continue to doing what has not worked for the last 10 years. We have to do something really different.
Absolutely. I'm laughing at the word nothing that you and I are throwing about. But this is so serious, Chris. You know, you and I kind of have a light moment when we have a chat, but this is such a serious issue. I mean, since late 2007, the ANC has done absolutely nothing to cement trust in the citizens. And the fact that it has the capacity or not, or the capability or the political will to resolve this problem. And we can't put it squarely, possibly not squarely, at Cyril Ramaphosa's door. We need to look at the previous, the previous chief commander in charge of the country then. Were they too busy capturing, the country and looting, going on with wholesale looting, that they didn't focus on infrastructure, electricity, and the future rebuilding of the country? That's the one issue, Chris. And then I'm also kind of wondering, why are we not making progress? This is such a serious matter. It could bring the country to a total standstill. Is it because perhaps at the back of Gwede Mantashe's mind is that maybe he can still get away with his deal with the Turkish people, the car power ships, etc.?
It's a complex set of questions you've just posed. I would say to try and answer this quickly in a short interview is difficult, but let me try. That I think one of the fundamental problems, and I'm simplifying it, but also cutting to the chase on this, is that we have been driven by ideological positions in the past, and ideology, as opposed to pragmatic decision making based on what can be done and what should be done, as opposed to ideological positions which are not necessarily rational and practical and in the best interests going forward in the immediate short term. I think we've been trapped in an ideological past, and it has made decision making, made the wrong decision making based on ideology. And ultimately, that needs to change. So I think there is now a growing awareness, very late, too late, way too late, that we do need to start looking at solutions. There's been a change in the ruling party from being a liberation movement to becoming a government where it delivers services. The two are kind of different things.
Mm.
I think one's got to get one's head around the fact that the liberation movement is by its nature driven by an ideological position, but government is very different. Being in government, you have to deliver services. and, and,
Okay.
and so I think that's the root cause of it.
All right. I know there's a lot of finger pointing at Eskom. There are suggestions that it's a historical problem. I just think generally, right across the board, South African politicians, governments, leaders, etc., were so busy lining their pockets that they didn't think ahead. There was no forward planning in place in any division or any governmental department, be it health, be it education, be it be it the issue around electricity. So right across the board, I think government has largely failed us. But be that as it may, citizens are making big noises now, and they have to start listening. I understand that there are signs that government will now finally act. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has hinted, but just hinted, that there will be an important announcement in the next few days. Do you have any idea what that might be?
Yeah, firstly, just to come back to your initial point that I agree with you entirely. This is not just an Eskom problem where you can point fingers at Eskom people. It extends much deeper than that because I think we all know by now that Eskom actually is not responsible for building new generation capacity. Its hands are tied. It's not allowed to. That is a function of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy and the Minister of Energy. One can't point to that. Secondly, if you just look at the delays to the Renewable Energy IPP program, the 5 to 7 year delay that took place under Molefe and Coco. Now, Molefe and Coco were, executives at Eskom at the time, but government allowed this program to be blocked. And we see at the moment government ministers trying to point fingers at others, trying to deflect attention from their own performance. I mean, just a few days ago, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Mr. Mankasha, said that, you can't point fingers at him for the continued decline of the energy availability factor. And I tweeted out a copy of his performance contract with the president, in which it states explicitly that he is responsible for ensuring that the energy availability factor goes up. So no amount of, but what we are seeing is this deflecting of blame and pointing fingers. Always, and of course, a state enterprise like Eskom is a very convenient scapegoat that politicians can point fingers at. And you saw this even in Parliament, Scope pointing a finger at Eskom. So I think it's very unhelpful. But I think moving to your second point, I think there is a stage where we need to start becoming solution orientated, as well as and not finger pointing and blaming, because we have a crisis we have to deal with right now. Yes, people need to be held to account. That's got to be done. But in the meantime, we have to come up with solutions, and there have been a lot of calls for solutions and solutions put on the table on how to deal with load shedding fast. And the president has announced that he's going to make some kind of a statement or indicate what he intends to do about the problem. So I'm hoping against hope that this will bear fruit and that we will see some positive outcomes. But I'm afraid the past is not very promising. If we have to go by what happened in the past when he was head of the war room and these sort of things, there was not the kind of decisive action that I think people feel is necessary.
Okay, a few more questions before I let you go, Chris. Calling for, obeying for Durator's head is not the solution. I mean, he's there to try and clean up the mess. He's sitting with a huge historical mess. Do you buy the suggestions that Eskom is being sabotaged? And if so, why has no action been taken? Because action needs to be in place if Eskom is being sabotaged. Who do we believe are the saboteurs and what do they gain out of it? Is going off the grid going to be an answer to our problems, and at what cost? And what would you suggest is the right way that we forge forward with this issue? So I've thrown a whole host of questions at you.
Yeah. So I agree with you that it's simply replacing the rater does not deal with the problem. And whoever
Mm,
takes his place will be sitting with exactly the same problem, and will be a new person in that position that has to get their feet on the ground and deal with the problem. So I believe it would be counterproductive. It would not deal with the underlying issues, and it would take the eye off the ball. And it's a kind of thing, playing the man and not the ball. We need to
mm.
we need to focus on the ball. What is the problem? We need to deal with the issues arising. So, what was the second question you asked?
The issue around going off the grid, because in the
Oh,
past,
okay. Yeah,
we've been threatened that if we go off the grid, we're going to be penalized heavily
yeah,
for that.
yeah. Yeah. So, look, I want to say very clearly that the solutions in the short term can only actually come from the private sector in its broadest context, from domestic dwellings, commercial, industrial, mining, agricultural, all of these different sectors bringing new generation capacity onto the grid, what is known as cell generation, distributed generation, and embedded generation. And this is not going off the grid. I must stress this very strongly. One has to understand the difference between going off the grid and supplementing one's energy needs with renewable energy or other generation methods while still staying on the grid. And I don't think anyone except people that may be in the most remotest areas of the country that are not served by the grid would be thinking about going off grid.
Mm,
But a lot of people are investing in systems that will supplement their electricity needs, which could supply their own needs during certainly the daylight hours, which is when most people use most electricity. And then also looking at energy storage devices like battery energy storage to see ones through load shedding, and also the peak hours in the evening and the early morning. So a lot of people are investing in those solutions, not just people, but businesses, big
mm,
and
mm.
small. And I think any
Right.
business that is not looking at these solutions, is hoping for the best. So the solutions are going to come from customers of electricity, taking ownership for their own energy futures, supplementing their energy needs, which will reduce the burden on Eskom. So at the moment, Eskom cannot supply what customers want. And that's why we have load shedding. But the more people that supplement their energy needs, the less demand there will be for electricity from the grid. And that will help Eskom and enable it to meet its commitments and enable, and reduce the pressure that is currently on Eskom, which is a pressure that it cannot meet at the moment.
Yep, bad news indeed. We are still sitting in the dark, excuse the pun. We don't know if we're going to make any headway, getting out of this very dim and dark situation we find ourselves in. Chris Yelland, always great talking with you, and I'm sure we'll be talking lots more in the future regarding this matter. You go well, have a great day, and God bless.
Thank you.
It is exactly 28 after 8 o'clock. We have some breaking news. Sri Lanka declares state of emergency after president flees. Sri Lanka has declared a state of emergency after President Gotabaya has fled to the Maldives with some of his family and bodyguards. This report has been filed by AFP, citing the Prime Minister's office. And that is the breaking news this morning, right here on Salam Media. 9:28 exactly, news and views on Salam Media.